Hello, everyone, and welcome to God Hand. Oh my god! Oh my god! Wow. I I understand why people love this game. God Hand is so good. It is ridiculously good. And also quite hard. So when I first started this game, I thought it was kind of like a meme game, similar to Dark Souls in the sense, well, it's just popular because it's really hard. But no, that's not the case. These kind of games that get this popular or have this kind of reputation, they have it because there's more to it than just the difficulty. And there is a difficulty. And notoriously this game is famous because IGN gave it a 3 out of 10, one of its lowest scores ever, because I thought it was just trash. And it's so funny that once you get over that initial spike, that initial curve of gameplay in the first level, and it opens up, it's an amazing experience. That I would say literally every single chapter gets better than the last. And while there's a story, it's very bare bones, but it's so much fun. And it's so weird this game came out in 2006, because that was like kind of the beginning of next gen HD, and it was still kind of stuck in the past a little bit, but it was like the culmination of all of these great ideas. So for example, the one thing I love about God Hand, first of all, it feels kind of rough. It feels very rough and very basic. When like you load up the game, there is like one short cutscene, which is kind of funny, about how Jean says, these guys are sexier than Olivia, and then she corrects him and he calls them sexy again. And you just start fighting, and it's this very weird combat that if you're not used to it, it's a completely new combat system. It's not a fighter, it's not a brawler. I mean, technically it's a brawler, it's a beat 'em up, but the controls are just very novel. You are basically pressing square to punch, triangle to high kick, X to low kick, and then circle for your special moves and whatever. R1 is your roulette wheel, and a bunch of other moves. And like you're getting your ass handed to you that first level, and it's very rough. Like the level, like of all the things in this game, music, characters, whatever, graphics, they're great, but the level geometry is kind of garbage. Like if you go up towards a wall, you'll clip in, or the camera will clip in, and you can see through the building. So it's very rough, and from a standpoint, it feels like a very rough tech demo. But as you play the game more and more, there's more mechanics, more dynamic characters, better music, and it feels really great. I think the characters are probably the best part of this game. So you play as Jean and Olivia, and you start off in this Wild West setting. And so Jean is just like a guy who got his arm chopped off, and he got it replaced with the God Hand, which is some magical arm artifact that you have no idea what it is. Olivia is part of this, not an organization, but she's basically, her backstory is that she was betrothed to this one guy, and she basically got out of that situation, and so she's basically using you to protect her, but also to help people, like free the slaves and help these other people and do this other stuff. And so she's kind of sort of like your girlfriend / employer. It's not really clear and established what it is, but she's, it's a duo. And so you're trying to stop this organization of the 4 or 5 devas, who are these demon-like entities who want to take over the world, basically. And they're just, cartoon villains. But some of them are very funny. So, for example, you have the headmaster, Basil, and then you have Azel, who's like the one human who has the devil hand, and he's kind of like your Virgil to your Dante. And Jean, by the way, is very similar to Dante. He's very witty, very sarcastic, very cheesy with his one-liners. Like he's like, I'm going to tuck you into bed or something like that. And he's great. Then you also have Shannon, who's kind of like the lewd female femme fatale character, and of course you have Elvis. And Elvis is fantastic. He is a overweight Mexican guy who thinks he's Elvis, or is like a version of Elvis, and he's always smoking this huge cigar. But like the peak moment of honestly this character is when you fight him. The music in that fight is a bunch of like YouTube poop sound clips of random Elvis noises, like "Hey baby, hey baby, oh yeah." Like it's like that. It was the moment. That was the moment when I was playing the game where I'm like, oh, okay, there's something very special here. And it's one of the games where there's just a bunch of randomness, a bunch of like crazy things that are happening, and it's not, I don't know how to say it. It's not weird or cringe or this kind of quirky humor I'm used to. It's legitimately funny. And that's the thing about God Hand, is that as you go from stage to stage, the stages are very, very short. Like, they might be 5 minutes. Some of the stages don't. There was one stage that had no enemies in it. You're just going from point A to point B. There's one stage that had only a few enemies in it. And so when you load these stages, it's like the thing loads, but very rarely will you have a cutscene. So you'll just be put into a situation where you have to suddenly fight a gorilla in a luchador outfit. Suddenly there's a level you go in and there's just puppies. It's like that. And so God Hand, it's very rough in a lot of ways. Like the load screens are very basic. The level geometry is super basic. But what that does lend to its gameplay, because if there is something in the environment, you can either destroy it or use it as a weapon. For a long time there was an umbrella. I didn't realize you could pluck the umbrella out of the ground and use it to stab people. And the game is just very intense. The feedback, the dynamics, the combos, when you hit someone, when you get hit, it all feels really good. And I think that's what people talk about this game so often. Well, actually, they don't talk about a lot of well, now that I think about it, but like, it has that reputation. And it's funny because people don't talk about this game because it's not like Silent Hill 2, where you can talk about the story and the characters and whatever, and there's a story there to unpack. But God Hand is an experience. It is a gamer's game. And I remember back in the day, people were saying, if you don't play God Hand, you're not a real gamer. And I absolutely understand why, because it's something that can only be experienced. I can't translate it through a review or a YouTube video or something. It literally is meant to be played. It cannot be watched. It is so unique in that sense. And again, similar games like Drakengard, where the first level is just so brutal and so awful that it caps the person and it doesn't make them want to go on. And it's funny, I just forced myself just a little bit more just to get through that first level. What really killed me actually in the first level, literally, was the demon. So when you are fighting a bunch of random guys, there's usually a 5% chance a demon spawns after you've killed that guy. And the demon is really tough. They're really hard. Like, if you try to fight by conventional means and you don't know what you're doing, it's very difficult. And I think that's the one thing that I was thinking, what would save God Hand? Because it does have tutorials in the beginning, but they're just kind of show you, this is how you punch, this is how you kick, whatever. But I felt like there should have just been a little bit more polish on the tutorials to be like, this is how you guard break, this is how you juggle, if you do this you can do this. So I feel like there's a little bit of that. I do like they don't hold your hand, they let you figure it out. But I do feel like I'll be honest, I did not realize you could guard break until like I was in like the second last level. I was like, I could have just, instead of waiting and dodging, and even dodging too, I didn't realize if you dodge forward, because it's obvious if you dodge side to side or backwards, you get out of the way. But if you dodge forward, you can spam that and you can basically dodge almost any attack. And I was like, oh, okay, I realized it. So again, similar to Dark Souls, it's very difficult, it's very punishing, but when you figure out one exploit, it feels really good. And that's the other thing too, is that this has another aspect, I think, of what makes a great game is a dynamic system, similar to almost to Tears of the Kingdom, wherein it gives you a tool set, and it doesn't say, okay, this is the way you're supposed to do it, like Doom Eternal. You don't have to, but you should be the Cacodemon this way. You should be the Arachnotron this way. It gives you a tool set of moves and different combos, and it says, figure it out. Not my problem. And so you can be really good at the game or very bad at the game. So there's a very high interpretation factor, or I'd say like interpretation or interaction factor, that if you're bad at this game or you're bad in games in general, you're going to have a bad time. But if you're good at the game and you're good at games in general, you're going to have a great time. And again, it has that artificial difficulty. Well, it's not artificial, but it's the sense where the game is very punishing, it's very unfair, and it basically feels like it's cheating. But here's the thing, it allows you to cheat back. Every time you go back to that same fight, maybe you defeat an enemy and they drop a roulette wheel. Maybe they drop a certain item that recharges your god hand. Maybe you go back to the same fight and that demon doesn't spawn from the same guy it used to. There's a whole bunch of different factors that when you go into each fight feels different, even if it's the exact same level, and that is very hard to pull off. Things like Halo do that, where you throw a random plasma grenade, it hits something, and then the delete rolls into its friends, and because it's difficult enough, you're relying on that slight randomness to make the experience engaging and fun. And again, the more you play the game, the more you figure out these mechanics: how to launch, how to juggle, how to guard break, how to grab, what kind of grabs, what is the time window of pummeling someone until you can actually do a special move on them. So the more you play the game, the better it gets, because what was super hard, you figure out it's such a new system from everything you've ever played. And that's the other thing that's also super frustrating about God Hand, that I think will turn off a lot of new players, is that it works on tank controls. And it's so weird. Like, this is an action fighting game. Why in the name of God does it have tank controls? And it shouldn't be fun just because of that alone, but it actually services it. Like, okay, when you double tap the control stick forward, you start running, and it's a bit awkward to move around. But the only way I can describe this game in a nutshell is that imagine you're Jack Krauser from Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries, and they made a whole game based on that. That is God Hand. That is what we're dealing with right here. And it feels great, honestly. It feels so good. And because, again, there's that level of randomness, of that X factor, similar to the Battlefield games. You can play the same match, the same players, but there's going to be a tank in a weird position, or someone decides they're going to be a sniper in a bird's nest. There's always that level of unpredictability in the system that makes I think, a truly great game, that you can never truly predict what is going to happen in a fight. And so I got the experience where I finished the game, I got through it, and it automatically starts a new game plus, and I found myself playing levels. I didn't intentionally go out, I want to get all the stuff, I want to get all the little shiny rewards at the end of the rainbow. No, I just kept playing, because I was like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if I get a roulette wheel? What if this happens in this fight? And I just got so into it. I'm like, oh yeah, a demon, that used to be so hard, but now it's like easy to me because I have the combo. And that's the other thing. I need to talk about the combo system. It's a little bit scary what they let you do. So there's games like Devil May Cry where they have their own combo system, right? Where it's based on timing and inputs, where you swing your sword, pause, and then if you pause, you're rewarded with an even better combo. You have different weapons that you use, forward attack, forward X, backward X, forward Y, backwards Y, helm breaker, whatever. So what God Hand does, it does have built-in sets of things where you have, if you press square 6 times in a row, it'll be a combo. If you press square and triangle and X, that'll be a different attack. And also if you hold back. So there's no forward, there's no shuffling, there's no moving the control stick in crazy directions. There's just only a back attack and the normal attacks in the combo. And what's crazy about this whole system is that it lets you map any attack you want, of which there are over 100 different attacks. And I don't know, I've probably heard this, or you've probably seen this in a lot of other games, it's a combat game with over 200 moves. Yeah, but all those 200 moves are tied to a specific weapon, or a specific segment or scenario, or a specific turret section of the game. But no, you can fully customize your combat. And again, if you do it wrong, you suck. But if you do it well, you feel like a god. You feel amazing, because, for example, the way the game, when you figure out as you play the game, is that, okay, you want to have a light, fast attack as your opening punch, because that will usually discombobulate the enemy so that they can't immediately counter. If you open up with a really strong attack and it's a big wind-up, they're going to hit you before you do anything. And so I find actually the best arrangement by the end of the game was you want to have a light attack, medium attack, heavy attack, and then go back to a light fast attack, medium, and end with another heavy. And I found like my personal combo was, I think it was a butterfly opening, then with like left, right hook, uppercut, and the two kind of like pimp hand attacks, and then you end off with I think the crushing blow, which is a juggler. So that is absolutely brutal, because what happens is you do a fast attack to interrupt an attack, you do two strong attacks, then you do another fast attack to interrupt them again, and then when you end with that juggler, you got them in a chain. And so what happens is when you do the juggle, they're in the air, and then as you're attacking them, there's no possible way for them to counterattack. And so you just are constantly juggling, and it feels like you're cheating. It feels cheap, and it feels so good, because like, yes, this is what I wanted. Oh my god. And if this game had achievements, it would have so many achievements. And the other thing too is that it has a sense of humor. It really does have a very refined, or not a refined, but a very distinct sense of humor that is not cringe at all. For example, like, it didn't really hit me till near the end of the game. You have a little poison chihuahua mini game where you race them and bet on them. And the dogs' names were the Amaterasu, because they also made Okami, but they have things like Fish and Mailed, 49 Cent, Sexy Maid. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is. This is the one game that feels like it's core guy energy. It feels like it was made by a bunch of guys in a frat dorm, where they're like, look, we're going to make a game where you can beat up demons, play blackjack, and look at hot chicks. Like, it's so distinct and so in its element. It feels amazing. It feels so good. And Gene as a character is a great character. He feels like a lot of fun to play as. And also, he's just kind of dumb. Like, he's like if Leon S. Kennedy, but you just like removed about 10 IQ points. Like, all of his comebacks don't make any sense, but he says them with such confidence that it's really, really funny. Oh man. But yeah, I can't express it anything than God Hand is literally a feel-good time. And there's that initial frustration, that initial kind of hazing, but once you get into it, it's really good, and you feel like a real gamer. I don't know how to describe it, but I finally understand why so many people praise this game, because it's so unique, it's so bombastic, and it's so intense. And I'll be honest, I'm just gonna say it out. You know, there's a lot of people out there, there's a whole cultural thing about video games don't make you violent. This game makes me violent. This game, like, I want to get into martial arts after playing this game. Like, this is my game that I didn't want to finish it, because every time I played it, I wanted to go to the gym. It is such a fun and intense experience that it's like, I don't know, it's like the Call of Duty of fighters. It feels so good to play. Like, this game literally belongs in a museum. And what I'm really getting at is that God Hand isn't the best game ever. There are plenty of other games that tell better stories, perhaps better soundtracks, better whatever. But God Hand, it's not the best game ever, but it is a perfect game. There is someone out there that I know, it is their best game ever. And God Hand, for its scope and what it's trying to accomplish, is the best at what it's trying to be, which is a fun, silly, but complex, interesting combat game. And it's not like Devil May Cry, it's not like Ninja Gaiden, it's not like Resident Evil. It is completely separate from all of those things. And I love it's so good in that. And I love the arcadey style where, you know, it can perfectly merges like new gen technologies of an artistic, you know, storytelling, but with the old arcade style aspects where, like, yes, there's a casino where you can gamble your points. Yes, there are a bunch of sound effects and power-ups. If anything, honestly, the only game that actually is very similar to God Hand is honestly probably No More Heroes, where you have this goofy, wild, fun character, and then you have the backdrop of the arcade style video game aspect that is incorporated itself into the world, which makes it fun. It's like taking all of the things that made old games fun and marrying them with aesthetics of like a mid 2000s game. And that's the other thing that also threw me off, is that this game came out in 2006. I'm like, a year later, Halo 3 would come out. I mean, at this point, Resident Evil 4 has come out, and so by that standard, this does not look like a 2006 game. Graphically, it looks very dated. It looks like it could be from like the earlier 2000s, and so that's why it's very strange. But the mechanics and the juice here are so refined, it's really hard to fault it on any aspect, if that makes sense. But yeah, and of course it has the general cadence of, speaking of the arcade aspect, after every level, not every level it'll grade you, but you can save, you can spend your points. But after the end of every chapter, of which there are 7 roughly, it'll give you a bonus based on how well you did. So how many continues, how many whatever. And based on that, you also get a bunch of bonus points that you can use to spend at your at your shop. And so what you use the points for are, there's basic upgrades that give you more health, more devil or god power energy, more roulette wheels. There's also the ability to of course buy new moves, new combo moves, and of course you can buy different roulette powers. And I didn't touch on it, but the roulette powers are essentially, you press R1, you want a slow motion, and you can pick them up as cards, but they're essentially these a series of roughly a dozen that you start with special moves that if you're in a really tough or tight situation, you can activate it, and you can do a kind of powerful move to take down like a chunk of health off a boss, or like a really tough enemy that's giving you a hard time. And it feels really good to pull those off. And I highly encourage everyone to buy the Shaolin energy blast at the end of the game, because I didn't know this, but when I went, I'm sure if you get this by default, but you go to the final fight, you get double Shaolin, and that's like almost necessary to beat the boss. I mean, I'll be honest, I was playing it on easy, but I understand why this is a game that you might want to play on normal or even hard to get the full experience, because it's one of those few games where the gameplay is the main character of the game. Like with modern games, it's like I could play it on harder difficulties, but the main point of it is telling a story. God Hand is a true gamer's game, because the story and the experience is the gameplay, and it is so refined. At the same time, everything else around it is kind of clunky. Like, I mean, the map is fine, but the map is like a little thing. Again, the environments are super basic, super simple, but everything else in it is just so good, so incredible. And again, you can find all these exploits. It feels like a toolbox that you can really, explore. Of course, the one thing I would say about this game is, of course, it's a combination of Fist of the North Star and, I don't know, No More Heroes. That's pretty much the only thing I can compare it to. You're basically beating up a bunch of guys in a post-apocalyptic setting while you're trying to save the girl. Like, it is what it is. And of course, you have a bunch of different fist fighting moves. This is the best beat 'em up I've ever played. This is the best brawler I think will ever be made. I can't think of a better action game with this much variety, with just punching and kicking. It's literally peak. They cannot make a better game. There will never be a God Hand 2, because this game is literally perfect. And it's kind of frustrating and weird to see it and say it like that, but I don't know, they could add new levels or like some kind of DLC thing later. I don't know. I mean, obviously that's not possible on PS2, but if they ever made a sequel, that's all they could do. But if they did make a sequel, they could not improve the mechanics. That's why I'm saying this game is perfect, because it's a perfect game. The mechanics could not change. It'd be like going from Bayonetta 1 to Bayonetta 1. I don't know. It's you can improve on this, which is why maybe they never had a sequel. But it's one of my favorite games now. I can definitely say that without hesitation. Anyway, aside from the goofy aesthetics, the fun character design, this whole thing is like an arcade slash story-based package that is just an absolute gem that, again, you can only experience by playing it. You can't get the story. There's not a lot of story. And I think the crowning favorite thing, I think at the end, which my only critique on it was that it should have been played as the opening, is the credits. the credits are so funny and so good and so soulful that it should have been the opening to the game, because that is the encapsulation of God Hand. I think a lot of people would have stuck with it if they actually had the opening. It's like, look, this game is kind of crappy, it's kind of rough around the edges, but there is an absolute gem behind it. It's the definition of soul, because what the end credits are, besides by being a kind of poorly voiced song. I never realized this, but after playing the game, I realized, oh wait, hold on, because I heard the song before. It's being sung by the voice actor who plays Gene, and I'm not saying he can't sing well, but he's not a singer. So you're going through the lyrics and it's like, I'm gonna drag and kick your ass into the Milky Way, Milky Way. Like, it is so not serious. Like, when I think about this game, it's like a combination of Fist of the North Star. If it was produced by Adult Swim, that is what God Hand is. That is the one encapsulation, if I can say, what this game is and why you should play it and why it's still worth playing today. And I know there's these people, old games weren't actually good, that's just your nostalgia. Play God Hand today and tell me that's the case, because we know you're either gonna love this game or hate this game or fall in love with it, and I think most people fall in love with it. So please, for all that is good, play God Hand and spread the word, because this game is peak. Anyway, with that being said, I don't want to talk more about the story or whatever, but go out and play God Hand. It is an absolute joy to play, an absolute blast. And once you get it, you are locked in. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say. Absolute classic. One of the last games I actually played on my PS2. I should have played it earlier, honestly, but I'm glad I finally got around to it. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.